What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to Mets Weekly. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and X for pregame coverage of the Mets versus Phillies Game 2 of the National League Division Series. Now, you can obviously see that I am alone. My co-hosts are not here. They will be back for the post-game after today's game. But as for right now, I am just going to be yapping by myself, and of course, we'll answer some questions in the chat as well along for the conversation. But before we get into everything, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for live recordings of the Mets Weekly podcast following every Mets postseason game until the magical run ends. For those of you watching live or on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. And after tonight's game, of course, we will be live for episode number 92 of the Mets Weekly podcast. For those of you in the live chat right now, I want to let you guys know that we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all of your thoughts regarding all this team. And if you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. We're just trying to star as many as we can throughout the show. We'll try to get to it to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, remember to follow Mets Weekly on X and TikTok, where we just wrapped up Frank's, my co-host, post-game thoughts for every Mets regular season game, titled the Mets Frankly Postgame, and we will have some content during the offseason there as well. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes of our podcast that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. So without further ado, let's get into our pre-game show. And it looks like we continue to ride high. Mets went into Philly for game one and took out their bullpen after Zach Wheeler basically dominated for 7 innings. But they were able to get his pitch count high enough to take him out of the game. And the Mets feasted on a very good Phillies bullpen, still just constantly giving that motto of what I continue to say over and over and over again, that the Mets, the full-on mindset of this team is you get punched in the gut, you punch back even harder. And they just continue to do that day in and day out, and they just seem to get stronger no matter what adversity that they face. And that is just been incredible to see from a collective team unit. No one seems to be, playing for themselves. Everyone is playing as a team, and that's how you win in the postseason. You can have all the star power that you want, but things just have to click at the right time. And right now, the Mets are playing phenomenal baseball. They are on fire right now, and hopefully they can continue that in game two and steal 2 games from Philly. Daniel coming in here saying what's up. Daniel Barry Sports Highlights, what's going on? Darren Rivera saying life can subscribe to Mets Weekly Podcast. Absolutely. I definitely encourage you to do that, and so does everyone else. But as for going into game 2, let's just say the Mets are playing with house money right now. The Phillies are the team that have the pressure on them. And for the Mets right now, I mean, they already accomplished the goal they needed to do on the road. They needed to steal a game, and then they would have an opportunity to clinch it on home field, which is something that the Mets have never done before. For those of you who know, the Mets have never clinched a series, a division, a wild card. They've never clinched anything on the Citi Field, on the Citi Field mound or Citi Field infield or whatever you want to say. Sorry, it's just we're still gathering everything here. But shout out to everybody in here, of course. Leave a like if you have not already on the stream. For those of you watching on Twitter, you might as well move over to our YouTube channel because that's just the best way to talk with us. Of course, because sometimes the Twitter comments just don't come through, and it's continued to be a problem. Still has not been fixed through StreamYard, whatever you're going to do. But we do encourage you to come over to our YouTube, of course, and hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications. We've got content coming out the wazoo in the offseason coming up, and then also just all postseason long, where we will be going live pre-games and post-games before every single Mets playoff game. And right now, at the current start, again, like I said, like I was saying, The Phillies are in that position where a lot of expectation is on them. They've had two back-to-back postseason runs, and it is true that when you have expectation, it definitely runs down on you. Now, obviously, the Mets, if they were to make a deep run, and then next year probably there would be expectations for this team. There wasn't really much expectation for this team going in. We did expect them to be a contender for the playoffs. They started off really rough, 11 games under 500, and they just continued to exceed expectations ever since. And that is the reason as to why they've played so loose in all of these games, and they've played like they have absolutely nothing to lose because, of course, being on the trajectory that they are right now in this organization, things are looking up. Things are looking up for the future even after what is going on. My co-host Andrew sang in one of our pre-games or in one of our post-games, I forget what he said, but he said, any of these postseason wins there, it's just gravy on top of a incredible feast that we have had this year. Right now, all we knew that you just need to get into the playoffs. And the Mets got into the playoffs, and so far they have been playing great baseball. They are 3-1 so far in the postseason. All of these wins have come on the road. All of these wins have also come from behind as well. They were behind in these games, or the other team scored first, which, like I said, just the big gut punch to you, and then you just punch back even harder, and that's what they've continued to do. You'd like to see them get an early lead, but I don't want to see this team get too comfortable, to be honest. I really do like to see them fight to the end. Obviously, you don't like when the other team scores first because it doesn't put you in a great position, but it seems like that's been the identity of this team with this offense as well, scoring in bunches. They have two different levels, like we've said, 0 and 100. Yuki coming in here saying, hey, Carson, hey, what's going on? I know you like to greet everybody on the screen, but I'm everybody on the screen right now, Yuki, so you're going to have to just deal with me. But, of course, like I said, my co-host will be returning for the post-game of Game 2 later tonight, which will be about 10-15 minutes after today's game. Now, we have a lot to get into, of course, going into Game 2 in Philly. Of course, after the Mets steal a game, we knew that the job was definitely done to set up a series victory. But it would be nice to take Game 2 as well, to basically just put Philly on the ropes and put them into desperate mode, going into a hostile environment that seems like Cristopher Sanchez cannot pitch in, from the likes of Rob Thompson saying that he's expecting Citi Field to be a pretty hostile environment and expects Nola to control the crowd a little bit better than Sanchez would, which is weird to know about, like maybe there is some lack of confidence in somebody like Cristopher Sanchez, because I do actually think that the Mets actually match up pretty well against him, even though Sanchez has had some really good success against us this year. It's a different atmosphere. We'll see what happens. Maybe the Mets can, control the crowd this way. Maybe the Phillies offense wakes up. You never know. You just saw one game, so maybe the rest of the series is different. Maybe it's all of the same. But that's why we play the games. If we all knew what was going to happen, then nobody would watch. If we all knew it was scripted, if we all knew that it had an ending that we could just look up on the internet, nobody would watch. So, of course, that's the team to watch right now, being the New York Mets, being as hot as they are. And, of course, looking at this pitching matchup, you have Luis Severino coming in here. I want to talk about him for a little bit. He looked to start off a little bit strong the last time he was in Philly, and then he just gave up a few of the long balls, and I believe that was the game that the Mets gave up like a 4-1 lead late on. The bullpen struggled, and it was one of the losses they had in Philly. Of course, they bounced back at Citi Field, winning 3 out of 4, but when Severino, I'd say that recently Severino has started to slow down a little bit. I think it's easy to say that. He has still been able to keep this team in position to win the game, which is good. But we weren't seeing that sharpness in September as compared to what he was doing all year. So hopefully we get a little bit better. I'm not really expecting him to shut down this Phillies offense, but the Mets were able to do it with a bullpen game, so maybe they can keep that momentum going. And of course, he's going up against Cristopher Sanchez, who I do want to do a little bit of a rundown on him because it's going to be definitely a different atmosphere. Let's just say that against somebody like Cristopher Sanchez as compared to Zach Wheeler, a predominant strikeout pitcher, throws a lot harder. Of course, he's a righty. Cristopher Sanchez is a southpaw, more of a soft contact guy, very similar to what David Peterson does well, but also he has a little bit more control of the strike zone. Obviously, David Peterson has been phenomenal for the Mets. He's definitely shut me up. I know everybody has been waiting to rub that in my face, but again, he has been one of the main contributors to this team, such as David Peterson. We don't know how, I don't know how long it's going to last, but again, when it comes to yesterday, he was one of the big parts as to why they won that game. He kept them in the game. Of course, Senga playing the way that we really expected him to, get the 2 innings. He's not fully stretched out. He's not fully healthy yet. Getting stretched out during the postseason, it's definitely a risk. It 100% is a risk. But when it comes to somebody like Kodai Senga, who is like, he's a great competitor, and he's always been someone who's been big for the moment back in Japan, which is quite an atmosphere as well overseas. But they got the job done. The bullpen was very stellar. They kept them in the game, and then the Mets were just able to explode. And like I said, with David Peterson being one of the main contributors as to why this team has been so successful. And I've been happy to be wrong about him. I have nothing. I know I make my jokes about my ego and everything, but for those of you who understand sarcasm, surprise, that was sarcasm. We always make jokes here. We keep it light, we make it funny, and everybody laughs. But other than that, let's actually get into Cristopher Sanchez, who I do want to talk about. Obviously, the scouting report on him, the Mets have faced him multiple times before, not just this year, but last year and the year before that as well. He's definitely developed into a solid starting pitcher, a mid-rotation piece, and he's a left-handed pitcher. He's a 3-pitch pitcher, 47% sinker, 36% changeup, and 17% slider. His best graded pitch is obviously that sinker that he throws a lot harder than typical left-handed pitchers. That sits about 94 to 95 and tops 97. He has over 17 inches of arm side run. And for those of you who are looking for the grades, 103 stuff plus, a 101 command plus, and a 99 pitching plus. As for the rest of the arsenal, the changeup, very vertically enhanced. If you want to call it a fader, you can call it that. And then he has this low spin, late dropping slider that is in the high 80s that is harder, but also has a little bit more movement as compared to some of the guys who have sliders from the left side. So definitely a little bit unorthodox of a typical left-handed pitcher, but the Mets have hit lefties fairly well, so maybe they can tap into it. Obviously, like I said, he's a contact managing southpaw. He does have limited swing and miss stuff. Let's just say that. But he does not walk many. He challenges hitters in the lower third of the zone, so the Mets are going to have to go down and get some. Let's just say that if they do want to make really good contact with a majority of his pitches. His 58.3% ground ball rate is third among starting pitchers this season. Of course, he has the massive arm side run with his sinker. But considering the wheelhouse from the other side, left-handed hitters actually have posted a 334 expected weighted on base average, xWOBA, quality of contact, and a 56.2% hard hit rate versus his sinker. So the lefties, they're probably going to be the main look at, even though the Mets have done well from right-handers. So, again, Brandon Nimmo is a player I definitely think is someone to watch, even though I think that the right-handed bats are definitely going to make a little bit more of the impact. But again, lefty-lefty is not that hard of a challenge as it usually is with some of these starters who absolutely carve up lefties. So it's definitely a little bit of an advantage there from the left side. Obviously, Nimmo is the only guy in the lineup who is going to be batting left. Obviously, the Mets are going a little bit more right-handed dominant. Their whole roster is right-handed dominant. So there's definitely a different look from there. And there is one thing that I do want to emphasize in terms of Cristopher Sanchez is that he gets ahead in the count 65.8% of the time, which is 11th among starting pitchers this season. So he knows how to get ahead to throw that first strike. But when he gets behind, there is going to be some factors that are going to factor into the keys to this game, which I will get into. And of course, Cristopher Sanchez against the Mets, how he has pitched pitched pretty well this year. Not going as much distance, but in total, 17.2 innings pitched, 16 hits, 6 earned runs, 9 walks, 19 strikeouts. That makes out to a 3.06 earned run average. So obviously, you're going to see a lot of ground ball stuff. Obviously, the sinker baller from that side, he's going to get a lot of guys to roll over. Of course, with the lack of swing and miss stuff that he has as compared to somebody like Zach Wheeler, hopefully the Mets can make quality of contact and not just quantity of contact, which has seemed to be the issue when they have faced somebody like Cristopher Sanchez. A lot of guys hitting the ball on the ground, not hitting it well, and it just led to very seldom results, very streaky results. Obviously, we all know that this team likes to score in bunches, but if they could attack Cristopher Sanchez a little bit better than they did against Zach Wheeler, which you kind of do expect with Cristopher Sanchez not being as good as Zach Wheeler is. But if he does get on a roll, he could get on a roll. I don't think that he's a pure control pitcher. I think he's just kind of just the pure command where he knows how to locate something that somebody like David Peterson has really done towards the bottom stretch of the season. Just locating properly and getting those ground balls and contact managing. He's not a strikeout guy, even though he does get occasional swings and misses, I believe, on the changeup, of course, kind of splitting out some of the deception, of course, with how vertically enhanced he is. Like I said, a lot of guys against him usually uses the bottom third of the zone against them a lot. So you're going to have to go down and get it. But again, when it comes to the changeup, it's going to catch you a little bit off guard. Let's just say that. Like I said, it's kind of like a fading changeup. So there's going to be somewhat of a little bit of deception, and hopefully they can eventually pick it up second time or third time around the order. We'll see. Maybe he comes out flat. Maybe he doesn't. But the Mets definitely have the opportunity to attack against somebody like Cristopher Sanchez with the right-handed dominant lineup that they have. Because he does have a few weaknesses. Even though these ground ball pitchers can be annoying, they can be pests. When they miss a spot, that's something that you definitely could take advantage of, and I will talk about that in a second. Stevie Mack coming in saying LFGM, absolutely. Tristan Korf coming in here. I don't think I've seen you in our chat before, but if you have, I believe that if you are in our chat, you have subscribed, because I believe it's on subscriber mode. So thank you for that. If you are new here, I wish I could freeze time so that this team never dies. Absolutely. But I think we can keep it up here. I do think that we can continue this momentum of how they have done. If they pitch as well as they have so far. Obviously, there's been a little bit of hiccups with the bullpen so far in this playoff run. But, if they pitch the way that they did yesterday, they're going to be in a position to win without even their offense doing that much. Even though the offense brought us a lot of insurance, you're going to have these tight-knit games, and the Mets kind of stayed afloat with that in game one, and they were able to pull it out later on with 6 outs left, taking Wheeler out of the game. So we'll see what happens going on with this postseason run. Hopefully the magic continues. We obviously do have to call it magic because, God forbid, anybody in the media gives the Mets credit these days. I know it's annoying, but, we got to get that hardware first before we get the full-on credit, of course. But when it comes to this team overall. We'll see what happens in terms of how Severino pitches to this lineup that has a lot of prominent left-handed bats. Schwarber, Harper. We know Stott, even though he has not hit that well this season, has done very well against right-handed pitching. And then also some of the righty-righty matchups. I mean, Trey Turner, we already know he can destroy pretty much anything in the zone. JT Realmuto, I think, has reverse splits now. The bottom of that lineup, once again, like I said, to my keys of the game in the first game pregame with Anthony Rivera from the Subway to Shape podcast. Again, shout out to him for joining me yesterday. But, that bottom of the lineup, they got to bully it. They have to bully the lineup. They have to attack them, and they were able to do that. I'm pretty sure that entire bottom of the lineup went hitless as compared to Cody Clemens, who came in for a pinch hit against Ryan Stanek at the end of the game. But other than that, the bottom of the lineup was pretty silent. And then they were able to take care of the best of it because, again, setting the table for that top half of the lineup that can do serious damage when you have to attack hitters, that's a death sentence. It really is. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a team that even though they scored 2 runs and they did not really get their offense going, this is one of the best offenses in baseball. You can't sell them short. And hopefully we can continue to shut them down. But realistically, again, if they find a pitch that they like, they're going to destroy it because this is what this Phillies team does. They hit a lot of home runs. They hit for power. They do a lot of damage in the zone, even though they do hit a lot of ground balls, like I said, with the ground control, of course, which they did do well yesterday, which was one of the keys to them doing well. More apart to actually David Peterson inducing a lot of ground balls. Like I said, one of the main keys to them winning game 1. Yuki saying that the Phillies did bench Bohm. They did bench Bohm. So we'll see what happens on that side, of course. So that makes the lineup a little bit less deep, but it still is deep enough as to where, 1 through 6, you could have some threats, especially with the matchups. When it comes to Bryson Stott, I'm not sure what his numbers are against Luis Severino, but I do have some players to watch for this game, and I do want to get into those right now. Jose Iglesias is one that you definitely can look after. Even though the Mets have not had the best success against Cristopher Sanchez, Jose Iglesias has in his little time being a Met. He is 3 for 6. He has a home run and a double. If you don't remember, the one game that the Mets lost at Citi Field like 2 weeks ago, Jose Iglesias led off with Lindor down with a home run against Cristopher Sanchez. And then after that, the Mets pretty much got destroyed. I think they lost that game like 12-3, 12-2. And then also Starling Marte is another guy to look out for. He's 4 for 11 against Cristopher Sanchez, and with a home run and a double as well. So obviously you have your 2 guys, Iglesias and Marte, both have been predominantly good against left-handed pitching. We know that Marte has had his flaws this year. He's definitely slowed down. But when it comes to pitting against lefties, Marte has been pretty automatic this year. I will say it's a small sample, but just from that angle, he just seems to hit them well. He seemed like the only guy that was hitting against Cristopher Sanchez when they were in Philadelphia the last time for a while, the only guy to really contribute, and then everybody else was pretty much silent. But as for the other side, Bryce Harper against Luis Severino, which I do want to get into a sequence as well regarding that. Luis Severino against Harper. Harper is 2 for 5 with 2 home runs, which he hit in the one of the games in Philly 2 weeks ago against him. And then Nick Castellanos, who is 7 for 21 against Luis Severino. Again, another guy with reverse splits as well. So when it comes to these types of matchups, I am expecting, the situational hitting to be a little bit better. Let's just say that from the left side of the plate, and also with the history, we know that Iglesias has been one of our best hitters with runners in scoring position, just working the magic the way that he has. And then Starling Marte, who, he has definitely come through against left-handed pitching and still has been one of our best high leverage hitters, which is weird because we usually see him just turn off his brain for the rest of the game sometimes. But you know what? He's the frustrating player that he always will be. He's getting older, like I said, but this is definitely his time to shine. Starling Marte, We are definitely counting on you to anchor that bottom half of the lineup, to drive in some of these pieces. Let's just say that the situational hitting has to be better, even though he was phenomenal in those last 2 innings. They definitely had some chances. Wheeler definitely gave them quite a few base runners. He walked a few. There was a couple of hits. He gave them a few opportunities. They had runners in scoring position many times, and they were unable to come through. I understand Zach Wheeler is a great pitcher. Like I said, I'm not surprised that he shut us down for 7 innings. But like I said, when it comes to that overall consistency, and hopefully they can keep pace with a Phillies lineup that most likely will score more than 2 runs today or more than 1 run in 8 innings today, just by probability of how good their offense is. I think that when it comes to the righty matchups against a guy like Cristopher Sanchez, who, even though he's pitched well to right-handed hitters this year, he's had a really solid year no matter what. He's a great middle rotation guy. I think that when it comes to guys like Jose Iglesias, when covering the bat over the zone, getting the barrel on the bat, just basically putting the ball in play. These guys like Iglesias and Marte are definitely guys to look out for, who definitely excel with that. Results are kind of 50-50 with Marte these days, but again, like I said, against left-handed pitching, could be automatic money. Now, as for the other personnel for this team, I do want to talk about the bullpen for a second, because it is going to be a little bit interesting with the situation that they have right now. Obviously, they played a little bit of a bullpen game in Game 1 with Kodai Senga only going 2 innings. Peterson gave you 3 innings. You had 2 innings from Garrett, and then Maton and Stanek finished it off. So most likely, you have 4 relievers not available for this game. And we'll see how they kind of piece this thing together. I am expecting to get 6 from Severino like we got in Game 1 against Milwaukee, just to keep us in the game. But if he does blow up, it might be a little bit tough to piece these things together. Like I've talked about, Danny Young and Adam Ottavino are guys I just don't trust. I don't even want to see in a playoff game. They literally can just warm the bench for the rest of the postseason. But we'll see what happens with Tylor Megill, because he was just put on their NLDS roster yesterday. Maybe he gets some long relief because he still is stretched out as a starter. We'll see what goes on regarding that. Budo will most likely be available again, like we've talked about. In terms of with Jose Budo. If he pitches 2 innings, given like how they mid-season kind of moved him to the bullpen and turned him into a reliever after starting the year in the rotation, after pitching 2 innings, he should be getting 2 days off. That's kind of how it looks like, how he is pitched into some sort of rhythm. So he has had 2 days off. He pitched Game 3, did not pitch well because he was on 1 day of rest after pitching 2 innings in Game 1. In Game 1, he did not pitch, so that's 2 days of rest for him. So he definitely will be available for maybe 2 innings today. So we'll see what happens there. Edwin Diaz was saved from pitching yesterday in the 9th inning. I know that we had a little bit of trouble with Stanek, but he was able to get out of it. And then when it comes to Tylor Megill, we just don't know what's going to happen. My special co-host for the day, like I said, Anthony Rivera yesterday, talked about Peterson and Megill being very important factors in this series. And I definitely do agree, especially with Senga back in the mix, trying to get him stretched out. And of course, with like a few arms in that bullpen that you just don't really trust, and you just don't really have that many long men. So, such as pieces Megill and Peterson, they are pretty much the long relief options. They don't seem to be in our playoff rotation. Jose Quintana pitched fantastic in Game 3 in a winner-go-home game, so he's definitely going to get another start. It seems like he is expected to start Game 4, but it has not really been announced yet. Maybe there is a little bit of a change. Maybe Megill gets it because Megill has not pitched yet, but I do think that Megill is going to pitch today out of the bullpen. Of course, when it comes to Sean Manaea, he will be starting Game 3. That was just announced by Carlos Mendoza for that personnel. So we'll see how they configure this. Again, like I said, I don't want to see Danny Young or Adam Ottavino in any sort of situation with this game anywhere close to being close. Like I feel like the maximum that you should see them is in like 7-run games, 6-run games. They just seem to be like the weakest links right now. I know that you do have some lefty-lefty matchups that maybe you bring him in for. And you don't have Peterson available for with Danny Young. He's the only lefty probably available today. So maybe you do get him. But I feel like that's one of those situations regarding where you just don't really know what he's really capable of, because he really just has not pitched well for the past like month. And he's also going to be coming cold out of the bullpen. He has not pitched in a while. So I don't think the lefty is worth in terms of that. But we'll see what happens. Maybe Stanek is available because I know that he likes to pitch a lot. He struggled yesterday. He threw like 25 pitches. He pitched in game 1 and game 2 against the Brewers, so he definitely has had rest. So you could go back-to-back days with him, but I have him as unavailable with the amount of pitches he threw. I don't think you're going to see Maton. I do not think you're going to see Garrett today. Garrett definitely pitched his ass off yesterday, and he was fantastic. And I definitely have him probably inching closer to that circle of trust, let's just say that, with our bullpen, as compared to what we were seeing when he came back, this kind of 50-50 stuff. But he's been good so far in the postseason. But again, with the bullpen, very finicky. It could change in a second. That's just how it is. It's just considering how you're feeling about the matchups in this bullpen. So we'll see how they do configure that. Of course, we'll see how they kind of go after it. It all really just depends what you get from Luis Severino, and I'm really hoping that we do get volume from him today, and we do get 6. It would be awesome to get 6. It would be awesome to get 7. That's asking for a lot, but he needs to dial it in. Stuff needs to be good, and I will talk about keys to him dialing in the way that he has in the keys to the game. But Yuki Matsui coming in the chat saying, Carson, do you believe our bats are due for some home runs? We only have 1 home run in the postseason. We hit a lot more in the past. Absolutely, I do think that they are due up for home runs. The only thing that I would say is most likely against Aaron Nola. They're due up for more home runs. You just don't get that much hard contact against somebody like Cristopher Sanchez. Could it happen against the bullpen? Against the Phillies, maybe, because they did pretty much beat them up yesterday with death by 1,000 cuts, constantly getting these hits with runners in scoring position. I do think that they're going to start hitting for a little bit more power in the Game 3 and Game 4. I do think that that's going to start happening. But as for Cristopher Sanchez, you're not going to get many opportunities, so you're going to have to do damage at the opportunities that you get. We'll see what happens in terms of the rhythm that he does get in. It all really depends how he needs to force the zone. Like we have said, if they do want to get damage against somebody like Cristopher Sanchez, they're going to have to go down and get it, because he loves that bottom third of the zone to attack hitters, especially with his sinker. And then, of course, his slider that he likes to jam inside to, I believe, left-handed hitters, if that is correct. Cristopher coming in here saying, what's up? What is going on? Of course, I do want to get into the keys of the game, but for those of you who are in here, make sure to leave a like, subscribe. We will obviously have our post-game after the game, about 15 to 20 minutes. My co-host will be with me, most likely. I know Frank will be. We'll see what happens with Andrew, because, usually things are confusing. He, sometimes he can't find his way to his computer because, he gets lost sometimes. But as for with the Mets going into this game, and I'm going to cut this one short, obviously, because it's just me here. There's not really much conversation to have. So probably at the 45-minute mark, 50-minute mark, I'll probably cut it off here, give everyone a breather for Game 2. But as for the keys to the game, these are Carson's keys to Game 2. You can obviously see it definitely factors in some of the matchups. And obviously, the first one I want to talk about is run like the wind. Now, base Steelers have an 83.3% success rate against Sanchez this season because he does have a very slow delivery to the plate. He's a very lanky, very long extension to the plate. And him being a predominant ground ball pitcher, the Mets need to take away the double play at any means possible versus a ground ball pitcher. And of course, like I've said, with him getting ahead in the count, especially with the lead when the leadoff hitter gets on, 68.3% of those leadoff hitters that have gotten on have come across to score against Sanchez. So it's definitely good to attack early from the stretch. He has struggled a little bit. So they definitely need to be aggressive when it comes to pitches in the zone. And I will talk about that in a second as for our third one. But as for our second one, it has to do with Luis Severino. Sweep the deck. Last time Luis Severino faced the Phillies, Bryce Harper took him deep twice, both on hanging sweepers over middle. Now, Harper by himself has posted a expected WOBA of 365 versus sweepers this season, but obviously he has had a 31.3% whiff rate against sweepers. Now, the Phillies as a team are also sixth in run value over 100 pitches versus sweepers this season. Now, Severino has been very productive with his sweeper this year, getting a lot of results from contact to whiffs, but he cannot be as selective with location. Every sweeper that Severino sets with the secondary stuff, it needs to break out of the strike zone, because against an uppercutting team like the Phillies, if it's a pure wheelhouse pitch, if it lands in the middle of the plate or anywhere near the barrel window. So he's going to need to pitch that out of the zone. It's been a really good pitch for him to expand the zone, especially against right-handed hitters. So hopefully he can bully the bottom of the lineup, like we have said, with those types of pitches. And he's really just, he has to stop. You can't get any of the get me over strikes, because they are going to do massive damage against that. The Phillies, they are fifth in highest chase rate. So they're definitely going to offer at it if you make a good pitch and tunnel it the right way. And that's what we're looking for with the breaking stuff regarding Luis Severino. Of course, we still need to have some of the velocity kick in against left-handed pitching. We need the good pitch shape, of course. Like I've said multiple times, the command needs to be there. But it was definitely one of the main factors as to why Luis Severino couldn't go deep in the game after starting so good. Now, the last one, count patrol. With lack of swing and miss stuff, Sanchez is always looking for soft contact. But if he can't locate and get ahead in the count, he has been very vulnerable this season. This season, hitters are slashing 344, 411, 593 versus Sanchez in 3-ball counts. Hitters counts are hitters counts for a reason, but against Sanchez, these pitches usually are the best offers that you can get to do damage. Now, when he walks a non-stolen base threat, it can just set up the double play. It's just more efficient to hunt for your pitch when he's on the ropes in a hitter's count. So as for all those keys to this game, I want to specify run like the wind. Of course, the Mets need to steal. They definitely need to take away the double play as much as they can. Sweeping the deck, of course, with the pitch selection going on with Luis Severino, the command definitely needs to be there against a free-swinging type of Phillies team that chases a lot and have a lot of swing and miss. And then, of course, count patrol. Like I said, 3-ball counts are the best way to get to Cristopher Sanchez more than any pitcher, especially lefties, in this game. So those are your keys to this game. I'm going to spend about 10 more minutes online with you guys, and then we are going to cut it short a little bit here, because again, like I said, it's just me here. There's no real conversation to be had unless I want to do some conversation starters with myself and sound like I am talking to myself insane. So no, I don't think that I will do that to the public, at least. I'll just talk to myself in private. Let's just say that. For those of you who can see the lineup in the bottom right, of course, There were a few changes made for the Mets. I believe JD Martinez is the DH for today, of course, against a lefty. Lindor leading off, playing shortstop. Vientos playing third base, batting second. Nimmo in left field, batting third. Alonso in the cleanup position, batting first. Batting at first base. Excuse me. Wow, that was a rough one, wasn't it? Jose Iglesias at second base, batting fifth. JD Martinez, the designated hitter, batting sixth. Batting seventh, Starling Marte in right field. Batting eighth, Francisco Alvarez catching behind the plate, and batting ninth, Harrison Bader in center field, who I believe that will be his first start of the postseason. And we'll see what happens there. Obviously, a little bit better of a favorable matchup against lefties. So, hopefully we get something there. And if not, there can always be a substitute because the Mets do have this outfield depth that they can work with, of course. As for the Phillies, they definitely made some changes. Like we mentioned, Bohm was benched. Yamando Sosa, I believe that's how he say his name. He's playing third base today, batting eighth. Schwarber leading off, the shit record that he is, no matter what. Trey Turner, Bryce Harper at first base, batting third. Cleanup position, Nick Castellanos, and right field. Bryson Stott batting fifth, playing second base, batting sixth. JT Realmuto catching behind the plate. Brandon Marsh in left field, batting seventh. Sosa at third base, like I said, and then of course Rojas playing center field and batting ninth. So obviously some changes made after the Phillies struggled to score yesterday in Game 1. Maybe these adjustments help, maybe they don't. Hopefully the Mets can keep the groove going as we are about 45 minutes to first pitch of Game 2. The Mets lead the series 1-0 after a great Game 1 victory, beating up the Phillies bullpen after Zach Wheeler absolutely demolished them and coming away with the win. We'll see if they can steal yet another game in Philly and put themselves in a huge position, in a really good position to advance to the National League Championship Series to play one of either the Padres or the Dodgers. Both really good teams that can definitely be one of the main threats to the Mets in the National League. So we'll see what happens there, but the Mets have to finish the job here in Philly first before they go to Citi Field for their first playoff game at Citi Field in about 2 years now. And hopefully we can clinch it there. I would like to see it, but again, we're getting a little too ahead of ourselves. This was a great first game, and hopefully they can follow it up in Game 2. And once that is done, win or loss, we are going to be live for the post game, about 15 to 20 minutes. So make sure to hit the subscribe button if you have not already. Turn on those post notifications. Like the stream, really helps us out. Follow all of my co-hosts individually. The links are in the description. Other news that we can probably put here. Jeff McNeil is resuming baseball activities this week, and he has joined the Mets postseason taxi squad. I saw that he was taking ground balls during the pregame, so I'm not sure how that's going to fit in to the equation. We all know my feelings about Jeff McNeil, but of course, recently in the second half, he's definitely picked it up, so maybe he can continue that. But we'll see what happens. I don't feel the need to platoon him with Iglesias. I think Iglesias has earned the everyday spot. We'll see how he fits into that equation. Maybe it just means that Acuna gets taken off the roster because he hasn't been really used as much. We'll see what happens. But again, the infield depth is something that is definitely been a strength for us down the stretch of the season, with Iglesias being as good as he has been, even with McNeil out. I've talked about McNeil many times, but again, if he comes back, we'll see what happens, and hopefully he can continue that hot stretch that he had starting off the second half before he got injured. We'll be live for a little bit more, 5 minutes. Any other notes that we can put out? Let's just say that. Other things that I do want to put out there, let's just say. Again, I think I've already discussed the usage of Tyler McGill today. I also talked about, the bullpen of who's available after the bullpen game that they had in game one with Kodai Senga only going 2 innings. Just let's hope, like I said, let's hope that they can do some more damage against somebody like Cristopher Sanchez, who has definitely pitched really good against us. Not amazing, but he has pitched pretty good and has definitely shut us down good enough to put his team in position to win against us. So hopefully that can change. Mets obviously having a right-handed dominant lineup with Nimmo only being the only guy batting from the left side. So we'll see what happens there. Of course, the late substitutions. Tyrone Taylor is not playing today. I'm pretty sure he played all 4 of the first postseason games. Definitely had back-to-back tough games. Did not look good yesterday. He's the 4th outfielder, like we have talked about it before. He's just been hitting better than Harrison Bader, so that's why he seems to be the everyday player these days. But it's good to give him a rest. Maybe he comes off the bench against a lefty. In the bullpen, maybe if there's a better matchup or something. But Bader definitely had a contribution to the game yesterday, stealing a base, scoring the tying run, I believe he did after pinch running for Alvarez. So, I think that in the margins, you still can see something from Bader. Again, as a 9-hole hitter, he gives you some value, even though he has struggled recently, I will say that. We'll see what happens. Again, Bader has had a good postseason career before. So maybe he rises to the occasion. We've seen Tyrone Taylor do well and then not do well. We'll see what happens. Cristopher coming in saying that Bader interview an hour ago on the Mets channel was awful. I did not see it. Those questions, not him. Yeah, probably. I mean, they do like to give in the generic calls to him. I don't even. I haven't really been listening to much. I've usually just look at the post-game quotes when there's something like controversial that happens on the field. I've never been one to really pay attention to most of that, but when it comes to Harrison Bader, I'm pretty sure he probably handled it well. I know John Heyman had like a very stupid question for Mark Vientos and Brandon Nimmo saying if they believe in this magic or whatever. And they kind of just shook it off. I mean, that's just kind of what the New York journalism is. I mean, there's nothing really that you can do about it at this point. Just hopefully the Mets right now, they need to do their job. That's it. And hopefully they can do it. Again, we'll see what happens. The hard-hitting questions in journalism, like, the old head type of questions, exactly. That's something that I think that, it just happens all the time. If I was in that position, I'd probably ask a lot better questions than that. But it's whatever. Now let me get to the poll to close it out here, guys. I asked you guys who would win game 2. For those of you in here who have not voted, please vote. 77% of you are saying the Mets are going to win. 10% of you are saying the Phillies are going to win, and 13% of you are saying that you are going to plead the 5th. You don't want to jinx anything. You don't want to put anything out there into the universe because of how superstitious Mets fans can be. So definitely there's a confidence boost, I think, from game 1, and there really should be. We'll see what happens if the Phillies go on the attack and try to tie this series up going back to Queens. But it would be great to get another victory here and take full control of this series and then get 3 chances to close it out, which would be absolutely awesome, and advance to the NLCS and continuing this magical run that it seems like, when I was here for the pregame yesterday with Anthony Rivera, once again, shout out to him for joining us. He talked about it like the Mets postseason. I mean, it's really started when it was like that Arizona series that got lit in the end of August or beginning of September. The Mets have been playing postseason. They've been playing for their lives for a long time. Even though this Phillies team is very postseason tested and they have a lot of experience and they've done well, the Mets have been playing on the ropes for a while. I mean, they seem to do better when their backs are against the wall. So we'll see how long this run goes. But as for the pregame show, I'm going to wrap it up here. But As for going into our post-game show, of course, like I said, 15 minutes to 20 minutes after the game is done, my co-host will be here with me. And you guys won't just have to look at my face. You can look at other faces as well. But other than that, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Like the stream. It really helps us out. For those of you on Twitter, hop over to our YouTube channel to watch our post game, which will be our podcast episode that goes out on audio at 9 a.m. the next day. We just had our audio go out at 9 a.m. today for the game 1 post game with me and Frank. And we will be live. Christopher T saying, thanks for the post game, Carson. Unsung hero. You have that good balance of professionalism and real talk opinions. Don't change. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Christopher. Thank you for coming through and saying that with your those very kind words, of course. I know that we can go off the rails sometimes, but we're here to make put our point across, and that's what our platform is for. We're here to be honest. We're here to, veer credit when we need to. Even though it's very, very hard for me, like I said, a very massive ego that I have, this is just something that we got to do sometimes, at the end of the day, But other than that, make sure to tune into our post game, like I said. Follow all of my co-hosts individually. The links are in the description. All of that great stuff. You guys know the drill already. And we'll see you guys tonight for the post-game after today's game, after Game 2. Mets versus Phillies. Mets with a 1-0 series lead, looking to go up 2-0 into Queens for their first playoff game at home in 2 years. We will see you guys next time. And as always, enjoy the game. Let's go Mets. And we'll see you guys tonight.